Welcome to the Meeple Syrup Aftershow, where designers are discussing design. We are on episode 4, talking trash can. We just had a great conversation with Eric Lang and Gavin Brown, and here's our chance to talk about the content of the conversation. Sen, I let you guys off the hook in the first episode, but I'm going to come back to it. What are some of your favorite, maybe just Ameritrash games in general? What's one example of a Ameritrash game that you love?
Oh, for me?
Yeah.
Um, I have a really soft spot in my heart for Queen's Gambit.
That's a great game.
Yeah, which is a Star Wars Avalon Hill game with tons of plastic, really cruddy rules, but my kids love it, and they've broken every single figurine that means something in that game. So, Qui-Gon Jinn no longer has a lightsaber. None of the big guys, the big beasts that the Gungans use that have the force field generators, those force field generators no longer exist. I don't know where they went. But it is that kind of game that after the kids saw the movie, they just wanted to play that game again and again because, like Eric said, it does really lead to that experience that they're looking for to relive the game and see if they can live in it and make some changes in it so that, maybe the Gungan and Jedi armies don't win and that kind of thing. So they really liked it. What about you, Jay? What's your favorite Ameritrash game?
Well, Sam, as you well know, Ameritrash is not my favorite of the two, if we had to dissect the two. But like Eric mentioned before with his lovely Venn diagram, things are merging more and more. And actually, one game I think it still would be considered Ameritrash, but it has a lot of Euro flavorings in it, is the Dead of Winter that just came out. And it's a zombie game, but what I like about it is there's not this one-to-one movement where you're slowly trudging around a location, and then the zombies move a certain amount, and then you move a certain amount, and then after 8 rounds there's some sort of interaction, and then there's none of that. So it's like a worker placement almost, with some decisions after dice rolls have been made. So that's that kind of Euro flavor aspect to it, but it still is player elimination to a degree, and secret goals, and it's cooperative, and yeah, I had a good time. It's very thematic, a lot of cool ideas in it.
Yeah, I got to play Dead of Winter at Gen Con, and actually one of the designers is scheduled to be on our upcoming episode talking about co-op designs. So looking forward to that. Yeah, but I'll answer for my favorite, and it's probably nostalgia plus cool mechanic, but I would say Risk Legacy. I just love nostalgia-wise Risk, and Legacy just made it work for me. Just the ability of scarring the earth and opening cool packages and all that kind of stuff, and having kind of this storyline going from game to game. For me, that just clicked. I just had a great time, and I'm looking forward to future Rob DeVoe games where he uses that mechanic. I know he's working on Pandemic and Seafall. Both of those, I'm super pumped about that. But I don't know. What about our guests? I mean, what is Eric Lang's favorite Ameritrash game that's not designed by Eric Lang?
Well, spoiler alert, Magic the Gathering.
Well, touche. We saw that coming.
Eric, have you actually, with all of your, in-demandness that you have you actually been asked to participate in any kind of legacy style gameplay?
I'm pausing here because I'm not.
Spoiler.
We'll take that as a yes.
I guess let the pause be telling. I got to be careful.
It's a definite maybe.
Maybe.
How about Gavin? How about you, Gavin? What Ameritrash game or games do you love?
I love Memoir 44.
Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a like a hardcore Ameritrasher, frankly, but
goodness.
I played a lot of Memoir 44, and I actually just really love that game. The one thing that I've really noticed about, if we're talking about like war game type Ameritrash is like the how you get into this seemingly impossible situation, like where I'm being backed into a corner and my opponent just can't defeat me because I'm rolling these seemingly impossible rolls to stay alive. And that's one thing that I think Ameritrash really lends itself to is the storytelling. Is like, you remember that time when like I had one unit and you just could not kill it, and I just kept killing all your stuff that was trying to kill me. Like that is one thing that you don't see in a Euro because it's all, it's very, well, this happened because X and Y. In this Ameritrash situation, anything goes.
Yeah, that's what I don't like about it, actually. But Jay, you had a question for Eric?
Yeah, actually, we had a question from the Twitterverse, and it's appropriate question from Sean Ross, the designer of Hagen. And Eric, you mentioned before this nice Venn diagram of the Euro and Ameritrash, and I'm not really sure if this is answerable. Yes, I love it. But his question is,
clips.
where do
So you have to do it over the heart.
Yeah, and you have to sing the song while you're doing it.
Where do card games fit into this Venn diagram, do you think? Are card games like not collectible like Magic, but just obviously something like Haggis or climbing games or any of these kind of games? Do they fit as a Ameritrash or more of a Euro, or they're in a separate circle altogether?
Are you talking about parlor games, like public domain games, like Euchre, like
that? Plus, now I'm trying to look at some Haggis or Who's the Ass or clubs or.
I can see on the background, Coup Pit.
Yeah.
Coup Pit. That's a great name for a game.
Mm.
Well, so the thing is, like, the reason why I did that Venn diagram is because I don't really believe in the Euro Ameritrash divide as a real thing anymore, right? I think it feels like an artificial delineation, except in terms of I think of them as design as tools and approaches rather than like genres, right? So like, is my game immersive enough? Is my game elegant and streamlined enough? To me, is a lot more useful than is my game American or is it European, right? Or is it Ameritrash or Euro? I joke a lot that the games I do are Eurotrash because I believe in discipline and streamlining and the simplest way to express an idea whenever possible. But I also like games that really suck you in and take you away, and games that elicit a really strong emotional reaction. Right? Like, to me, the worst game is a game that just sits there and everybody's like, at the end of it's like, that was vaguely interesting.
You mean Splendor?
Hey. You said
oh
things.
Yeah, I said that. Sorry, that was me, not Eric Lang.
You said things. But like, I mean, I like games that I like. Somebody put this really well once. I don't remember who it was because I'd love to attribute the quote. But gamers like games because they make them think, but they love games because they make them feel. Right, and
I like that.
If I want to play games I love, not games I like.
Yeah. No, I like that.
Really cool.
There was mention of war games earlier. Gavin was talking about Memoir 44, and I got to give a plug for our next week's episode because we're talking war games. So, and one of our confirmed guests is Jeff Stahl, or I don't know if I'm saying that wrong.
Please tell me that Dylan Kirk is one of the hosts next week.
I believe he is.
And please tell me I'm not.
He is the freaking king.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Dylan is definitely confirmed. When we mentioned we were talking war games, he was like, "Gibbs, I call it." So
No Jay.
No Jay. He's not going to be talking war games, but I do want to talk about. I mean, we have two hosts here that are co-designers. And I know both Gavin and Eric and I have experience with this as well. What's it like co-designing bigger games, games that take lots of iterations. What are the pros and cons of co-designing? I know Eric's co-designed with a variety of people, but I'll throw this question actually at the Bamboozle brothers first. What is it like? What are the pros and cons? Why should people co-design?
Jay, go ahead.
I'll give you one pro of co-designing, and it's coming into frame right about now.
Oh, redeemer.
Pew, 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 pew.
This is the Geeky Award for Belfort, which is Sen and I's first game that got picked up, of course. But just joking aside, well, that's cool that we won that, obviously. But the benefits is...
I am very impressed.
Shameful, actually. The benefits is the two brains and the fact that... Yeah, sure.
Please.
Just hold it.
Oh, yeah.
Hold the gun. Take it off.
Take it apart. It's magnetic. Look at that.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
I want a Geeky Award. Look at that thing.
He turned it on.
Yeah.
Turn it on.
It's on.
You know what? When I saw the video of you guys, like, of I'm like, that's the guy from Heroes.
Yeah.
Like, talking about Belfort. Like, that was awesome.
Yeah, it totally was.
And then he's like, and Sen and Jay.
No, he did not say
Belfort.
Jay. He said Belfort.
Come up and accept your award.
Yeah.
You guys weren't there.
We weren't.
Nobody was there. We weren't invited, so I'll put it out that way. It was actually TMG. They actually responded that they were going to be there. They actually RSVP'd that they were going to be there, but Gen Con weekend.
Yeah, it happened on Gen Con, so the same weekend. So it was a very impractical thing. So Jay gave one pro about designing together was that we have two brains, but I'll give a con. A con is that sometimes you have to actually communicate, with each other. And Jay and I do that really well. So it hasn't been a con for us as much, except when things get misinterpreted because we're communicating electronically most of the times. Seeing that we're in two separate time zones, there's 3 hours between us. So when we have a difference of opinion, it's typically because one of us hasn't communicated the idea fast enough, well enough, and that one of us has jumped ahead of the other one in terms of stage of what we think the game, where we think the game should be, and so that's just some growing pains that co-designers will go through. It's the same with any group type of think.
So when you guys are communicating, do you communicate like via Google Chat, or do you like start a hangout and verbally communicate? It's
mostly using our forum, so that we'll have a private forum that just Sen and I have access to, and we'll chat. We'll type some stuff up, and it's all separated by every game has its own forum, and within a game it has 3 or 4 different subforums for the different stages of that game that's at. Neat. Yeah, and so I would log on. I'll see, there's like 4 new posts, and I'll read the new posts, and I'll respond to them. Just that back and forth.
So do you guys create? Do you guys create like Google Docs and like go in and make comments and stuff?
Yeah. Google Docs, Dropbox, everything we use to stay in touch.
Yeah.
So Eric, shout out to you. Who do you hate working with the most? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. How does that co-design come about for you, Eric? Does somebody ask you, or do you get paired up like a buddy cop movie where you got to work with somebody that you hate and then you learn that you love each other?
Eddie Murphy, dude. Only if I get the Eddie.
Turner and Hooch.
Yeah. So it's actually this is a big topic for me because I used to design solo almost all the time. I mean, I've always been working with a team. Like, I always work with publishers, and I always work closely with developers. So there's always a little bit of collaboration on some end. But I've usually been the principal or only designer of the core system, the core engine. But in the last few years, I made a concerted effort to do more co-design. And I enjoy it a lot. Well, so I've been designing alone for so long, I wanted to broaden my skill set, right? I wanted to see what I wanted to see what working with somebody else 50-50 was like, right? And it was pretty awesome, I'll tell you. Like, my first real true co-design was with Mike Elliott for Core Ears. and that was our first like real 50-50. And even then, we kind of divvied up. We divvied up areas of the game. Like when it came to balance, Mike was in charge. When it came to theme, I was in charge. That just came about organically, right? But it's just because there's a need. We found there's a need for leadership. Like if we disagree, it's somebody. The decision has to default to somebody.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so I found that works a lot. That works very well, and it can change project to project.
Okay.
So have you co-designed anything with Kevin Wilson yet? Because you guys seem like two peas in a pod when I saw you guys.
We're pretty much best friends. So yeah, it's
there you go.
We actually have co-designed 2 games that are we finished one of them like a year and a half ago. It's for a relatively new publisher who are they're finding their feet at this point, and they're really smart guys. They just have they got a lot on their plate. They're a comic publisher called Third World Studios. They do the stuff of Legend and Finding Gossamer.
That's actually my favorite Eric Lang game.
The Finding Gossamer?
No, Gen Hex.
Oh, right. Yes, Gen Hex, which is based on Finding Gossamer.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the game. So that was designed with Kevin Wilson.
Cool. Awesome.
That was fun. It was the thing I love about it the most, Jay, is that every single co-designer I've worked with is so different, so completely different that we have to reinvent the process every time.
Interesting.
I just finished a game right now with right now with Antoine Boza from France.
Really?
Who did a Sen? You played it actually, I think.
I did, and it's pretty fun. I liked it.
Yeah, it was at Fan Expo.
That's right.
And that working with him is like 180 from working with Mike. Like on that game, I was the mechanics guy and he was the theme guy.
Huh.
And
so how did that one come about?
How did that one
come about? Like, did he come up to you? Did you approach him? Do you know each other beforehand?
That's a good question. I'm trying to remember. Well, so we kind of orbit, right? There's a number of designers in a, I don't know what you want to call it. Like orbit is the only word I can think of.
Twitter.
Twitter? Designers at Twitter.
That is not becoming a thing.
No, especially not with a little like. God, it's late. So anyway, design. Once you've published a certain number of titles in a certain type of box size, you end up just orbiting around other designers who have designed games in that same box size, and so.
That's interesting.
That's
it's the box size club.
Exactly. My box size, by the way,
Man, I'm
way
like 6 inches by 3. I heard you are too. We got something in common.
It's actually true, though. I mean, publishers always talk central box size. They do. They like Days of Wonder will say, "I need something in the Days of Wonder box size."
Yep.
And if you don't design for that specific box, you don't get in with Days of Wonder. That's just what it is. It's so true.
Daryl, what it is.
Daryl, design for a component list quite often.
Yeah. Daryl, what about your experience co-designing with Steven?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as accomplished as Eric on like getting to work with illustrious designers from around the world, but for me, it was huge building that relationship with Steven and finding, that workflow that we worked really well with each other. We bounced off ideas. We had different strengths and weaknesses. I think it's really interesting, Eric talking about how he's even kind of role reversaled. Some people from Europe that are known as, the Euro mechanics are coming to Eric asking, I want to do a fun game, and Eric's exercising his, and then Eric's actually doing the mechanics more, and here some European designers are coming up with theme. I know for us, for Steven and I, we've really delineated what roles work well for us. The joke was, even at the gathering of friends, I had this little card. I don't know if I could make it work, but I would position this right near me, and whenever I would be talking, I'd be like, well, here's my co-designer, or if I said something smart, then And so, like, I can say, you know, here's my co-designer, and you know, he is strong at these aspects, and I am strong in these other aspects. And it really was something to a publisher to say, well, you know, we know you have strengths, we know you have weaknesses. Gavin, I know you worked with Matt, for example, and also through Roxley, you're working with other designers. Why don't you describe what it's like working with other designers? What are the benefits? What are the cons?
Especially someone like Matt. Yeah.
Matt is a brilliant game designer.
He is, absolutely.
He never watches these shows, so you can say whatever you want.
No, but Matt is he's a very, very intelligent guy. But you have to have a compatible Matt personality.
Yep.
So I happen to have a Matt compatible personality, so we actually hit it off pretty well. And when we some of my most deep conversations about game design have been with Matt, and we would call each other up in the middle of the day. I got this brilliant idea for my whatever game, and you just drop everything and let me hear it.
Yeah.
And so we would have these conversations all the time, and I actually quite enjoy working with Matt. And co-design, I totally like the process. That's about it.
Okay, so Daryl, a question back to you, Daryl. With you and Steven, did you divide your work up kind of like how Eric did with his teams, as far as one of you's doing something, one of you's doing something else, or did you both kind of take on all? For Sen and I think we both take on all things. We don't divide like that. I thought it was interesting listening to Eric that he divides it like that, and I think Sen and I, we just both do everything. And sometimes Sen will take it away and play test the heck out of it and change it, and he'll come back and tell me what's changed, and I'll take it, play test and change. What about you, Daryl?
Yeah, actually, we do divide roles. It's not necessarily always the stereotypical, like everyone would assume, because Steven's a really gifted artist.
Who wears the pants, Daryl?
Yeah, who wears the pants? But honestly, it's more like what Gavin was describing about when someone has this great idea, like we're excited to call each other and say, oh, what about this? And it snowballs. And so we really, we have probably half a dozen designs on the go. And so we can, whenever the ideas are flowing for one game, you just go with it. But I would say naturally, I'm more on the side of mechanics, of math, especially math. And he's always pushing, where's the feeling, where's the theme, where's the, really pushing back so that it doesn't get boring or dry. And then also, I mean, because he has a great eye artistically, that's going to help with user experience and all those aspects. And then for me, I love pitching games, so I can even spend time talking to publishers and using this great prototype that he's poured in some love. So we go back and forth. We take on roles. That's how we function, and I'm really looking forward to actually this weekend. Me and Yves Tournier, we decided to co-design a game, so we're going to be working on that. I'm looking forward to seeing how we'll co-design a game. If it works out. I mean, the beauty with game design is you try stuff and maybe it comes together and takes a while. But how about Eric? Do you want to talk a little bit more about, I guess co-design's different than this, but working with a publisher, you had this history working at Fantasy Flight. Can you describe, none of us have worked for a publisher. What is it like to work inside, for a major publisher?
It was like to work inside.
Inside the publisher, inside it.
That's how you get to the
right
top.
In it.
Well, you start in the belly. I don't really work like an employee does, right?
Right.
I do my game design in Canada, right? So when I'm commissioned to do game, I do the vast majority of my game design here.
You're never in Canada. You're in Asia or Brazil.
Istanbul. I don't know.
Following
Indeed.
Eric Lang on Twitter is depressing. What am I doing with my life?
Fun. You're making games for a
living, dude.
living,
I ask myself on a daily basis, following you on Twitter.
You're making games for a living. That's what you're doing. It's like so. I do a lot of so generally when I'm working with publishers, Skype is my best friend. I do a lot of Skype conversation with them. I would say about 50% of my day is just talking to the publishers on Skype, and it's all issue oriented, right? So when things come up, living card games are extremely they're extremely content heavy. So there's always a backlog of like crazy new stuff. Either I'm reviewing work that their developers have done for the game, or we're doing a brainstorm session online, or I'm just tossing them ideas for mechanics for games that I'm no longer leading for. But when I go down to work on site, it's not really so much work. It's mostly like, here's the game, right? Here's the game I've done, and then we just play test it. We run through it, suggest a bunch of changes, suggest a bunch of revisions, and I come back home, and then just do the rest of it. But the details, like what it's like to actually get revisions like on site get notes on site from the publisher, is pretty awesome. I wouldn't trade that for anything. Like, it's brutal, it's harsh, because these are guys that they're paying employees, many employees, but so they've got to get games out on a deadline. So they got to be harsh. They got to make decisions quickly. They have to make it to a timetable, right? Like,
Yeah.
when we make games for ourselves, we have years to do it. A game's done when it's done, right? I had to do I think Chaos in the Old World is a game that I guess gets talked about the most. I did that game in 3 months, right? That was the timetable.
That is rad.
That's the difference between doing like a software publisher and here. It's a time pressure.
Were you going full time? Were you going full time at that point when you did Chaos in the Old World?
Full time on Chaos, or
like did you have another job?
Oh no, I've been full-time game designer for 17 years.
Oh my, wow. Holy shit.
You wanted to clarify, Eric, the difference that you had about working with a partner or somebody else, a co-designer, and how you divide work. You wanted to clarify that?
Oh yeah. Sorry, yeah. I think I misrepresented myself. So we don't like take discrete chunks out of the game and go, you do this, you do this.
Oh, okay.
What I meant is it's in terms of leadership. So we both, in every collaboration I've done, like generally we both do work on all aspects of the game, but we generally like divide the leadership roles. So like when it's the tiebreaker mechanic, right? Right. When we have a disagreement, we must defer to one of the two of us as pre-agreed, because especially when you're working with designers that have been doing this for a long time and have built up a really big body of work, a big body of success, they have a certain degree of ego investment in the game, which they need. It's healthy. So that's basically how to keep ourselves in check.
Yeah, and it's not like you started out as friends and then you eventually said, hey, let's design a game together. Like, you guys are now professional game designers, and then you're being mashed together, hey, you guys should design a game together. And so you don't have that necessarily friendship to fall back on where you can just kind of hash it out. That's a good idea for. We'll remember that when we're big
together.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well,
yeah. Go ahead, Eric.
The game industry is so awesome that I'm basically friends with everybody I've worked with. I can't say that about any other industry. Yeah. So even though we didn't start as friends, we ended up as friends. Like it's crazy.
Kind of like So You Think You Can Dance. TV show, right?
Yeah, exactly like that.
I didn't see that reference coming.
Friends.
I didn't see that reference coming.
Am I right?
Am I right?
Eric has not seen the show.
Eric is choosing to decline to answer. But yeah, I think it's different. The board game industry is so very, very friendly. Even though I think, Eric, we had this conversation once that we're all in competition with each other, but at the end of the day, we can still be friends, which is very different than a lot of other places.
I honestly don't feel like we're really in competition with each other, though, right? Like, I guess there are points. Sure, there are X number of slots at each publisher to publish every year. So if it gets there could be a point where you've got a game with Days of Wonder, I got a game with Days of Wonder. They're going to make one game that year, sure. But really, that's like the competition is really going on in the background, unbeknownst to us. But I don't feel like I'm like I don't feel any bad at all about helping you with your game, even though you're submitting it with the same publisher that I am.
So
Because-
what you were saying is you're going to join the Game Artisans of Canada.
The GAC.
Yak.
You're the only Canadian that's not a part.
Oh,
Well,
there's more.
there's a
There's
few
more.
Is there?
Yeah, Jeff.
Yeah, we're having Jeff on next episode.
All right.
Maybe we'll recruit him too. I think this is a recruitment show apparently.
Seriously, I didn't know
What's turning
that.
a cult?
It's
Yeah.
kind of cult-like. It's cult-like,
Yeah,
like
Yeah,
the cult of Nurgle.
Nice.
I did not get that reference.
You wouldn't because you don't like that kind of game.
Oh my god.
I
What's
know.
pretty awesome about this is that the whole concept of this after show was just supposed to be us as hosts chatting about, hey, what'd you think of that episode, and what are your thoughts on it, and we can extrapolate. But we had such an amazing and interesting guests on that we can't stop asking them questions. So Daryl and Sen, Daryl, what are your thoughts about the show we just did?
Yeah, I mean, I know personally, I've got the opportunity to hang out with Eric many times, and he is just a normal dude that likes to hang out and play games and and encourage people and make better games. And so, from my personal experience, I knew Eric would come on and just encourage viewers how to make better games, because I know that's my personal experience, and I've made.
Then we also had Gavin.
Well, I know it's kind of come around to that.
Hey,
Gavin,
thank you.
well, I was going to say,
Thanks
Gavin.
I
Gavin,
did
I
the
actually-
logo.
Well, so Gavin, for the first time I got to meet him was actually via online with Game Artisans and the forum. So I would, see this interaction, but I didn't know who he was. And then finally, getting to go out to the Gathering of Friends, got to meet Gavin, and the guy made my head explode talking game theory, because I sat down with Matt and Gavin and actually listened to some of those deep conversations he was talking about, and I loved it. So I knew right away that this synergy of guests would have tons of material and get us thinking and talking about game design, and we couldn't really just focus on Ameritrash or anything like that. We're just going to talk games, because when we get together, that's what happens. So, Sen, I know you have some thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, I mean, Ameritrash, Canada Trash Can, whatever, Euro. I think Eric's right that it's all merging into this big amalgam, and maybe that's what Canadian gaming is taking the best of all worlds. But one of the things that Daryl talked about was the amazing conversations that we do end up having. One of the ones that I recently had with Gavin was about phases. Phases in a game, and how phasing or making multiple phases in a game allows you to develop tons and tons of content. And I don't know, Gavin, if you were like drunk at the time, but you were going off. You were like talking. It was awesome. It was like you were a philosopher in your like, holding court in a pub, like gaslight London, talking about the deepest stuff. Sorry, I almost said SHIT. The deepest stuff available. I know. Oh yes, it's past midnight.
Well, I mean, Eric's the one to talk about this. I mean, most of Eric's games are phase-based, and I find myself wanting to sort of go to like an action-based system in a lot of my games, but I see all these games like Summoner Wars is so beautiful, and then obviously a lot of Eric's games, also beautiful, have tons and tons and tons of content. And they're all phase-based. Not all of them, but most of them are phase-based. Especially.
What you mean? Can you break down what you mean for the viewers, just by phase-based and how that generates?
So like you have the draw a card phase, and then you have the move phase, and then you have the attack phase, and then you have the whatever phase. So the redraw phase, and then you have the mana phase. So just a bunch of phases making up the central game system. So the central core game mechanic, like the central mechanic of the game, where all the spoke mechanics sort of connect to, is the phase-based system. versus like an action-based system or a role selection system. What do you think, Eric?
Oh, lovely.
I think it's just a phase.
The same.
But what Gavin had been talking about is that, like, let's say you get +1 attack. You have a card that gives you +1 attack. By
Great
giving many discrete phases, you can now have +1 attack during the draw phase, +1 attack during the move phase, +1 attack during the defense phase, +1 attack during any of these phases. And then you can call those each a different card. They can have little different costs, but essentially they're doing the same thing. So you're generating content over phases, but it's the same thing. And it's just a way to really, excuse me, have a format that not only the game runs smoothly because it's phase-based, but has a really almost built-in methodology of generating lots and lots and lots of content, which is perfect for living card games.
When you said the same thing, I think to clarify outcome, you just mean it might look the same, but when it's in a different phase, it actually impacts the game differently.
Sorry, can you repeat that because you were cutting out?
So you said it was the same thing, having this attack, but what you actually meant was, or correct me if I'm wrong, that it looks like the same thing because it says attack +1 or whatever it is, but because it's in a different phase, it should impact the game differently.
Oh, of course. But I'm
Okay.
just saying that you're just tweaking the same variable across different phases, which allows you to generate lots and lots of content, but it is doing different things. So anyway.
Awesome. Well, you know what? That's pretty much our after show. We were definitely thanking our guests, Eric Lang and Gavin Brown, for coming out and sticking around, hanging out with us for the after show. I think future after shows will probably be more. We won't have as interesting guests. We'll be able to talk to each other more and chat about the show that we just had a little bit more.
Wow. You set the challenge. No, any guest who doesn't stay is less interesting.
Wow, future discs.
Yeah. So remember
you just like planted a bomb.
Yeah, that's right. Sen, you going to throw up an image of all of our places they can find us, obviously on the YouTubes and the Twitters and the all the Facebook pages that we have.
You mean that
We have
one?
that handy.
That
Probably,
image right
if I can
there?
see
Yeah.
it.
Do we get some fun music?
No, there's no fun music in the after show. The after show is like no fun music time.
No fun music.
Does
Just
anybody have a beatbox?
make games.
Yeah, just make
right.
games.
Daryl, leave us with a little plug on next week again.
Yeah, we're talking war games for episode 5. We have Jeff Stahl, and we're still working on a mystery guest, and also expect to have Sen, myself, and especially Dylan Kirk, our war game huge fan. So look forward to that show. If you have questions between now and next week, send them our way. You can send them to our Twitter at Meeple Syrup, or leave them on our Facebook or Google or any of that. So looking forward to talking war games and more dice fun.
Dice are cool.
Thank you.